Hi, my name is Jenna King, and this is the Bidding Fundamentals webinar. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to cover off on folder structure, revenue models, and bid rules associated with Marin's automated bidding feature in order to provide a base understanding of how to use the tool. If there's time at the end, we will also be answering participant questions, so please hold your questions until then and make sure that you're submitting questions as we go along within the questions box. If we, for some reason, don't have time to get to any of the questions you've submitted, please follow up with your online marketing manager. The first thing we're going to be covering is basic methodology and approach that Marin Bidding takes. A couple things to keep in mind with Marin Bidding. It's easy and quick to set up. It helps to achieve your performance targets, provides automation at scale, and will react automatically to changing market conditions. Things to keep in mind as we move through this is that it does not solve all performance problems. So it's not going to address click-through rate for specific pieces of creative or landing page issues if you've got conversion issues associated with your landing pages. It's also not going to guarantee growth. The Marin Bidding algorithm will aim to hit an efficiency target, and efficiency doesn't always mean volume growth. It also shouldn't be set up once and ignored. So this is an ongoing investment and should be treated as such. So you should be checking on bidding your bid folders to make sure that they are achieving their targets once you've set them up on an ongoing basis. So Marin Bidding uses a workflow that goes as such. It starts with taking the data, assigning groups to folders, assessing setup risk, going live, and then monitoring and making adjustments as needed to make sure that the performance is in line with your goals. So the amount of time that it takes to go from the start point to the end point is going to vary based on the client and the comfort level within the setup that you've completed. So Marin Bidding uses a predictive model that utilizes historical data to generate calculated bids. These calculated bids are the value assigned per click to meet your business targets. The targets are set within folders. A folder is a collection of ad groups with some form of similarity, such as similar business goals. These business goals could be a product type or a seasonality target, or similar business targets, such as a specific cost per lead or a margin percent. Rules and targets, as mentioned before, are set at the folder level within Marin. So that should be kept in mind as you start setting up your folders. Keywords can also leverage data from the folder level in the event that they don't have enough statistically significant data on their own. Keywords fall into two categories. We have head terms and tail terms. So head terms are those keywords that have enough clicks and conversions to determine bids based solely on their own data. Tail terms are those keywords that may lack their own click and conversion data. It can be difficult to bid on such terms as they lack this data, and they can also usually take up a large percentage of an account. However, in Marin, keywords without significant conversion rate or value per conversion data will borrow or leverage data from similar keywords within the same folder, making it possible to make bid decisions on these terms. So again, it's important to make sure that you consider this when creating your folder groups. So that leads into some folder structure best practices. So general best practices when assigning groups to folder include splitting out brand or trademark terms. So usually these brand terms will have a much higher conversion rate, and at the same time you might want to be bidding them to certain positions on the page for branding purposes. So these should definitely be split out into their own folders so that you can target these goals effectively. You would also want to consider separating by advertising inventory types. So performance could vary widely across Facebook campaigns versus content versus search campaigns or mobile specific. Another best practice would be combining publishers. So we want to combine publishers such as Bing and Google. And it's not going to make a difference to the Marin algorithm that you're combining publishers because keywords are bid on singularly. so there's no need to necessarily break them out. Combining data will also provide folders with more data for tail terms, since these keywords can borrow data from keywords from other publishers. Another best practice is not to use the unassigned folder. So this folder is created by default and should house terms that are not assigned to a folder and should not be turned on. So we definitely don't want to turn on this folder or use it for bidding purposes. Another folder you might want to consider creating is an exploratory spend folder. This folder would not calculate bids, so it would be in the off mode, but it would house groups with less than 10 clicks of all time that could be rotated in the folders with more consistent performance as to borrow data from those keywords within the more consistently performing folders. The ad groups to be included in the exploratory spend folder may include some diamonds in the rough keywords, which is why it would be a good idea to test them at some point and make sure that you're not overlooking these particular keywords. However, you do want to be careful because this testing strategy could cause swings in spend in the short term, as more often than not, new keywords do not perform at the desired level of efficiency right away. So Marin recommends condensing folders where possible. There are a number of reasons to do so. Ease of management is one of them. It's much easier to manage and change folder settings such as boost and target if you have fewer folders. It also kind of defeats the purpose of having to go in and change settings for many different folders. It defeats the purpose of automated bidding, which means that you shouldn't have to do as much work. You'd also want to have smaller folders so that we can aggregate and blend data within a folder. So increasing the amount of data being shared for long-tail keywords within a folder will lead to higher statistical significance and more accurate bid calculations. So the more data you have within a folder, the more accurate and confident the Marin bidding system will be. Bidding also needs conversion data. So Marin requires having at least 11 conversions, so no less than 10 conversions in order for data to even kick off. If the data is too sparse, there won't be enough conversions for bidding to start. So again, 10 is that threshold, but we would recommend having at least 40 conversions per month to ensure that bidding can achieve the targets set. So now we are going to walk through the platform. So from here, I'm on the bidding tab, and I'm going to click into the folder that we're going to use for the demonstration purposes today. The first thing I'd like to go over is the concept of static and rolling excluded dates. So I can access static and rolling excluded dates in the left-hand corner of my settings tab within my bidding folder. So it's important to consider if there are any days in the past or even in the future that should not be used in providing data for the algorithm to consider. For example, a conversion spike due to an aggressive sale or a drop in conversion due to a site malfunction might be something you'd want to consider excluding dates for. These dates, if that were to happen, might not be indicative of actual performance and should not be included in the bid calculations. So if, for instance, we had a day where the site, our site went down and we weren't able to accurately allow people to convert, I would want to come in here and I could say I could exclude that date easily from my bidding calculations. I can also choose to copy static and excluded dates from various other folders. You can also set rolling excluded dates down below. So this will exclude a set number of days from bid calculations. Exclude most recent is often used if there's a significant latency between the click and conversion. So if somebody clicks on your ad and takes, takes more than, generally more than 2 days to convert, you might want to consider excluding the past 2 days or the most recent 2 days from your data. You also have the option to exclude beyond a set amount of days. Overall, the exclude date function, the rolling function, will prevent decisions from being made before conversions are garnered from clicks. So we're going to navigate back now to our Settings tab. So now we'll go over the settings within a folder. The first setting we're going to go over is bid calculations. So Marin has 3 states of bid calculations. There's the traffic, preview, and off stage. So we can come in here and choose to set our folder to each one of these stages. And then when a folder is set to off, no bid calculations are performed. When a folder is set to preview, bid calculations will be calculated but not pushed live to the publisher. For traffic, bid calculations are calculated and pushed to the publisher. So we'd only want our folders to be trafficked if we're comfortable with the bids that Marin is calculating so that we can actively use them within the publisher. Next, we'll cover off on some revenue models. So the revenue models become more complicated as you move to the right. The first one, cost per lead. This is used for marketers generating conversions at a targeted cost and will utilize conversion data only when determining which bids to be pushing out. Performance marketers utilizes conversion and revenue data for marketers that want to hit certain profit margin goals. This is the view that you'd see if you were going into to set up based on performance marketers. E-commerce uses conversion and revenue data in a similar way to the performance revenue model, but also will account for cost of goods sold. Specify by conversion type can assign value and bid against multiple conversion types to enable the model to bid more for keywords that drive higher margin products. So for example, you might value, a travel company might value a hotel booking at a higher revenue than it would value an email sign up, and it might want to specify that here so that the algorithm can push keywords that drive more hotel bookings than they would revenue or email sign up. For purposes of today, we'll assume a cost per lead model. I'd also like to note that this folder is right now targeting a position goal, but we'll cover that off a little bit later, and for now we're going to allow this to target a financial goal. So moving on to targets. After you select the revenue model, you'll be able to set the target you want that folder to operate against. This is usually set to a business target, or it is set to the 4-week average in order to effectively operate according to historical performance. So you'd set these targets down here, and if you have a specific target that your business is recommended you aim for, you would want to set that target right here, or you'd want to, you can use the 4-week average, which is will be available to you here. And keeping that in mind, you could set your target cost per lead to be around there or targeting something around there. The minimum target only applies to keywords below the first page bid estimate on Google. This is the target you're willing to aim for in the event that a keyword is below the first page. You can set this to be the same as the target, but if you have some wiggle room and want to allow for a more lenient target to see if that will allow for terms to move up onto the first page, this is where you would do that. This can sometimes be referred to as a stretch goal. If many keywords are optimizing to the stretch goal, it might actually make the folder look like it's underperforming as a whole, since the keywords, if these are not set to equal each other, you'll have some keywords that are optimizing towards this maximum CPL. Initially, when you're starting off, we would recommend that you set your target CPL and your maximum CPL to be equal to each other so that the folder has an opportunity to get some consistency across the board before you start to play with this maximum CPL or stretch target goal. After setting each one of these targets, you'll want to set rules the folder will abide by when trying to hit each of these targets. So the rules are located down below. And the first rule we're going to cover off on is boost. So the Marin Bidding algorithm calculates the optimal CPC to hit folder targets. In other words, the bid calculated is the amount you want to pay in order to hit your targets. However, oftentimes, the bid you set is higher than what you end up paying. So in Marin, we refer to this difference as headroom. Headroom is actually a column you can bring into the grid via the view builder. So boost then is a multiplier used to account for this headroom, which again is the difference between the bid and the average CPC. So initially, we would want to set boost. Initially, boost should be set to a folder's headroom for the past 2 weeks, and then adjusted from there to hit targets and dictate the trade-off between volume and efficiency. So if we look at the boost for the past 2 weeks for this folder, that's what we would want to put in here as a starting point for our folder rules. And then from there, you can use boost to push or pull on the folder depending on how you're coming in terms of budget or volume for the quarter or the month or the week. For instance, if I'm coming in at the month and I'm under budget, I might want to increase this boost. So if it was set at 0% for most of the month, I might want to increase it to 10%. As I'm coming up on the month and I'm actually under budget in order to try to increase my efficient volume within this folder. Boost should be used as more of a short-term type of lever to be pulled to, again, monitor volume or spend, whereas target up above would be used to monitor and set more long-term business goals for the folder to try to efficiently achieve. It can also help you, Boost can also help you adjust for changes in seasonal demand, promotions, holidays, competition, anything that short-term might affect your volume or efficiency. So additional folder settings or folder rules include this bid cap. So bid cap is, in other words, telling the Marin algorithm to never bid above a certain dollar amount. So this can be really effective and can prevent high bids from being calculated, especially if there's incorrect data. We could set this, to be something that we're not comfortable paying above. So if $100 is something, is our max and we'll never want to pay above that, that's where we would come in here and set, that max CPC. But keep in mind that if you set this too low, you might actually be hindering efficient keywords that Marin is trying to bid up the page. So you want to keep in mind your current CPCs and where they're being, what you're paying and what they're being bid at right now, so that you don't set your bid cap too low, hindering the folder. The next one is this max bid change. So this will essentially limit bid changes to a specific percent of your previous bid. So this will prevent large daily bid changes, which limit the risk of exposure. We generally recommend that this is set to 25%, which in this case it is. And this will allow you to control your folder volatility. So in general rules that if you want to be more conservative, keep this lower. So you might want to set this at 15 or 10, even 10%, so that your spend doesn't swing too drastically one way or the other. The higher this is, the more reactive your folder is going to be while you're trying to hit your targets. So if we have, a bid and the Marin system would like to bid it significantly up from where it's currently sitting, it will only bid it, in this case, in 25% increments until it hits the bid that Marin is trying to calculate. The next one is this minimum bid change. So this is going to basically tell the system, don't apply a new bid if it's within a specific dollar or cents amount from its old bid. So the main use for this is that it limits the number of bid changes and will speed up the amount of time it takes to post bids through the API. The idea here is that a few cents difference in a bid change is not going to really impact position, and therefore we don't need to change bids that are only being changed by a couple of cents. We only really recommend this for large keyword sets, so greater than 400,000 keywords, or on Yahoo Japan accounts where you have to pay for specific API limits. So again, this is not something we would generally recommend setting unless you fit within one of those two categories. The next one is position cap. So this is telling the system not to raise our bid if the position is at or above a certain cap. It prevents needless bid inflation once the desired position has been achieved and avoids potentially costly bidding wars. We generally should not, our best practices that we should be set to 1.2 as an overall folder level, but we should never really set this at a 1.0 as it's nearly impossible to hit 1.0, and it can just result in you paying a lot of money for the system trying to hit that target, and it's not going to be necessarily efficient as you can get into costly wars with your competitors. The next one is the always keep above bid for first page or the minimum bid. This forces all keywords which are below the minimum bid to the minimum bid. This is not recommended unless you have super specific goals that you want to achieve, as again, this is an easy way to blow out spend within the folder. If you have a lot of keywords that are currently sitting below the minimum bid and are being bid up to that point, especially if it's inefficient according to the system. The last one is the bid floor. And this is a never bid below a certain dollar amount. Again, this is generally not recommended as a starting point, just because if Marin feels that the keyword is inefficient, it's going to bid it down on its own. It's also something where if we have a bunch of keywords that are sitting below the floor and we're bidding them up to this particular floor, it might be inefficiently and unnecessary ad spend. You also have the ability to override bids. So if we scroll back up, one option you have is to set groups to target a specific position range at the folder level by optimizing to this position goal. So this is actually what the folder was set to initially when we came in here. The goal should keep in mind the 4-week average, which you can see right here, and it should be a relatively tight range since the algorithm will bid keywords up until they are within this position range. They will also bid keywords down until they're within the position range. So the tighter this range is, the more control you'll kind of have over where these keywords fall within that range. So again, we might not want to set this to 1.0 as that could cause some unnecessary bidding wars. But if we wanted to, hit the first, in our top 3 spots, this might be a good range in order to do that. Bidding to position overrides the calculated bid, but will still abide by all folder rules except the position cap. So if we come back down here, you'll notice that we no longer have the option to set a position cap since we're setting a targeted position range at the folder level. But we can still set all the additional rules down here. So a best practice for that in using the position goal would be putting all your brand groups in the same folder and then bidding to a specific position range, especially with all of your brand terms in the top 3 spots, or even if you want to keep it in the top first or second. We would recommend putting them all within the same folder and then using that position goal at the folder level to achieve those targets. You can also override bids at the keyword level. So the way we would do that is by navigating to the Keywords tab, which I had just done, selecting the keywords that we would want to include in a bid override, coming up to this pencil, and selecting the bid override. And then from here, we can choose to target a position range for a handful of keywords, which is different than targeting the position goal that we had just done at the folder level. This will only apply to the specific keywords that we have selected here, but the same kind of range applies and the same kind of rules would apply to that. I wouldn't want to necessarily push all the way up to the top spot. I might want to keep within the first 3 positions. I can choose to target that position range, or I can choose to just override and turn off bidding temporarily for these keywords. So, bids would remain static and unaffected by folder settings and performance if I chose to turn this on. They would also stay at their most recent bid unless you make changes otherwise. So whatever the keyword bid was when you had turned on the position override, it will continue to remain at unless you tell the system or make a change within the Marin Bidding system, or go into the publisher and make a change within there. So you can choose when to override until. This could be particularly useful if you have specific keywords that for a period of time you're running a promotion on and you want to kind of sacrifice efficiency and either manually bid those keywords or just specifically target a position range for those keywords. So then moving on, we'll now talk a little bit about risk. So if we go back, or assessing risk. So one of the things that we're going to do is going into the, back into the settings page. So one thing that, or actually we're going to go into the summary tab, excuse me. So this is a page where you can preview any changes that will be made to keywords within the folder once the settings page is set up. So one thing to note is that the folder must be in preview mode or this will not populate. So if the folder is currently in off mode and Marin is not doing any bid calculations, regardless of the fact that they're not being pushed out to the publisher, this won't populate. So make sure that it's in preview mode before trying to come into the summary tab. So the preview bid changes by converting keywords. You can do that here. There's essentially 3 different categories that these will fall into. Bids lowered, which will show up in blue. Bids raised, which will show up in green. And bids which really won't be changed once the folder is trafficked, and Marin Bidding kind of takes over, which will show up in gray. You can also preview bid changes by converting and non-converting spend by using this drop-down at the top. So this will show you the percentage of bids being raised or lowered based on spend of converting and non-converting keywords. We won't get into that, but that is an option if you choose to want to view it that way. So next we'll kind of go into spend by bid category. So this is a really good area to take a look at while your folder is in preview before you push any bids live via traffic. So this will show the percentage of spend affected by the various folder roles. So as I called out before, the folder that we're currently looking at was set to target a position, and the bid categories over here on the right will reflect that slightly differently, or will vary slightly. So one category that's actually not represented here that's important to take note of is the economic category. This will show keywords that are being bid on that are using the bid based on the Marin system. So it'll be keywords are being bid on based on the calculated bids. So it's not going to be hindered at any level based on any of the folder rules that you've set. So for generic terms, we'd like to see anywhere between 80 and 85% of our keywords falling within this economic category in order to consider the folder to be healthy. If you see a large percentage of your bids sitting at the bid override or position override, automated bidding is not able to perform as designed, and your folder may or may not be hindered. You may or may not be hindering the performance of your folder. So now if we click back into the Settings tab, so we're going to talk a little bit about forecasting. So again, if we're targeting a financial goal, excuse me, we have some forecasting tools available to us here. So we have this chart, and we have these charts at the bottom. So the forecast should be used to help set your targets. Predictions for these forecasts are based on the past 28 days of data, and the more recent data is weighed more heavily. So clicking on the chart, you can kind of see how changing the chart will change not only your targeted goals, but will also change these charts below so that you can see how the various metrics are affected. So we can make our targeted CPL lower or higher, and the charts will reflect that. So clicking anywhere will show you how these changes to the target will change performance. So it's a good tool to use to kind of get comfortable with where your target is and how changing that target might affect the performance overall of your keywords. Another good sanity check is looking at how the Marin algorithm is changing bids for top keywords. So if we click into this keywords tab, the keyword sub-tab, and we bring in the search bid and calculated search bid, which are actually already brought in here, but are also available if you click into the view builder. You can see here that the search bid and calculated search bid is right there. You can see how where your current bids are being calculated and what the Marin bid, what Marin will be bidding your future bids at if you choose to go live with the Marin bidding algorithm. So again, the calculated search bid is just what Marin would be using to push to the publisher if the folder was on traffic. If you filter based on impressions or clicks, you can then take a look and see how your top keywords will be affected in terms of if they'll be bid up or bid down once the Marin bidding is turned on. You can also see data used at the keyword level by clicking into a specific keyword. So this will allow you, in general, if we scroll down, you'll see this Show Details link here. If we click into that, this is basically a breakdown of what the algorithm is doing at a very, very detailed level to calculate your bids. So this is something that, if you have really important keywords and you are unsure about why the algorithm is doing something in particular, this would be the place that you could go to that kind of break down what the algorithm is doing, and make sure that you're comfortable with how the algorithm is working. This particular keyword is not generally, this is a very, very useful tab. Again, if you really want to understand at a detailed level how the Marin algorithm is affecting a particular keyword. So now we're going to jump back into the PowerPoint. So we've achieved, or we've kind of gone through our platform walkthrough. So we're going to go into reviewing summary and forecast features you should consider before going. So these are kind of some pre-launch questions that you should ask yourself while you're in preview mode before you actually go live with Marin bidding. The first one being, is the target achieved historically? So, are you far off of our goal? Are or is our goal too far off of what we've historically been achieving in the past? And if that's the case, should we rethink our goal? And we should be keeping this in mind as we, allow the Marin bidding system to kind of make assumptions and move through bidding in order to achieve your target. And the next question would be, are most bid changes positive or negative? So when we go live with Marin Bidding, am I going to see, an initial drop in volume or an initial, lift in volume based on the fact that I'm either seeing positive or negative changes to my bids? Are the better performing keywords being bid up? So for my better performing keywords up, what is the Marin system doing with them? Does that make sense? Should my better performing keywords be bid up? And what are my better performing keywords? Are the worst performing keywords being bid down? So intuitively, it would make sense that I'd want my worst performing keywords bid down. So is that what Marin is doing? And if not, why? And that would be a good place to kind of dig into the keywords detail page if for some reason you come across a scenario that doesn't seem very logical. What will happen to the highest volume keywords? So again, we had kind of gone over this a little bit, but using the keyword subtab, you can filter to see high volume keywords by clicks or impressions, and then see what Marin will be doing once it takes over bidding for those very high level keywords. We'll be achieving an efficiency target, but does that mean that we'll be sacrificing some volume given that Marin is going to be operating towards those targets that you set within the folder? And then should any additional overrides be applied? So again, are there any scenarios where I have keywords that might not necessarily operate at the efficiency I've set, and if that's for a period of time? And if that's the case, should I be applying overrides to those keywords now before I go live with Marin bidding? So next we'll kind of talk about monitoring, tracking, and measuring performance. So again, we have some common reasons why folders may miss expected performance targets. One of the first ones is that most keywords are already in the top position. So it's not possible to increase spend if most of the keywords are already in the top position. So if they're already at the top, you can't bid them further up the page, and therefore, we might not be hitting a target due to that specific reasoning. The next one to consider would be that your targets are not realistic to previous performance. So aggressive targets, which are a long way from the historic performance, will take longer to reach than targets fairly close to historic performance. Again, this is, when you're setting your targets, you should take a look at the 4-week or 2-week historical average and make sure that they're relatively in line. You might also want to consider, again, that maximum bid change rule as you're looking through this too. If you've set that to be lower and you're on the more conservative side, it might take a while, especially if your targets are far off from your historical average. It might take a while for the Marin bidding algorithm to get to the point where it's applying the bids that it sees fit in order to reach those new targets relative to its historical performance. Next one would be changing conversion rate. So if there's a change in the conversion rate, this will impact the performance of the folder, but is generally not due to bidding, and bidding will respond automatically if trends continue. So if there is some reason that conversion rate changes drastically, and it's not something that you expect moving forward, this would be a good candidate for using those exclude dates. But if it is something where, this is your new run rate and it's your new conversion rate moving forward and you expect it to be indicative of performance, the Marin bidding algorithm will pick up on that and will respond automatically if the trend continues to go that way. Next would be changing headroom. So if the headroom changes significantly, the boost may need to be changed in order to compensate for that. So it's always a good idea to keep an eye on your headroom at the folder level. And again, change boost if necessary to reach kind of those short-term goals. If you have no excluded dates set, so if there's erroneous data in the history of the folder, then it can influence the bid calculations. So again, make sure that as you come across instances where you don't think that the the historical data is indicative of future performance, that you use those exclude date feature in order to make sure that Marin is not using that to calculate future bids. Next would be too many terms on position or bid override. So if you have too many terms that are in this bid category, it will prevent the folder as a whole from achieving the desired target. Basically, you're saying that you're overriding the Marin bid calculation, and instead of using that, you're targeting a specific position for keywords or turning off bidding altogether, and therefore Marin's not able to efficiently try to drive those keywords to your target. Last thing to consider when monitoring performance is that calculated bids are being forced above the bid floor. So either they're being forced above the bid floor, or they're utilizing that rule, that that min bid rule, which again might drive some keywords to be bid up that wouldn't necessarily be bid up if these rules were not enforced by the Marin system. So tracking performance. So dimensions can be used to track performance. So setting up a dimension when bidding is launched will help identify performance, as you can aggregate data from all groups being bid on. So to do so, create a dimension under the admin link, the dimensions tab. So a great example would be setting up a Marin bidding dimension, and then assign a dimension value to groups and folders that are set to traffic. So we would want, an example here is calling, setting these groups to have the value Marin underscore and then the date that the folders were set to traffic, so that you can easily identify and make sure that you're using the correct dates when you look to compare how Marin's doing in terms of bidding versus how you were doing prior to having Marin bidding on. You would then want to assign a dimension value to similar groups that are not in trafficked folders if possible. So this would be a great way to set up a test. So you would have the groups set in a folder that have gone live on a specific date tagged, and then you would have similar groups tagged with this control field, so that, or this control value, so that you could easily compare the dates that, or the groups that are on Marin bidding to groups that are not, and see how the relative comparisons are. So an example of measuring performance. So if our goal is to maximize revenue while maintaining ad spend, you can see here that we've set up our dimension called bidding test 8.8.12. And we've got, Marin automated bids were live at the beginning of September, so September 3rd of 2012. And we've got that designated with that value, Marin bids September 3rd, 12. And we've also assigned groups to a control field so that we can easily report on the changes between the two dimensions here. So we can see here, after selecting specific dates in the calendar, that we had a positive 36% change in ROI for the Marin bidding groups, and then our control saw a negative 1% decrease in ROI over that same time period. So after doing some calculations and data being as subjective as it is on this folder slide, we saw a $10,000 increase, or 20% increase in monthly revenue based on the groups that were using Marin bidding. So if we jump back into the app. I'd also like to point out that you can also find additional information about Marin Bidding using the help section. So within our help center, there we have a bidding category. And here you can just find a bunch of articles related to some of the stuff or most of everything that we've covered today that you would find, could find helpful as you kind of work through bidding and troubleshooting overall. So now we're kind of open at this point to some Q&A from our audience members. So we have some common questions that people generally ask as well. So one of those common questions is, what is the effect of the stretch goal on the performance of a folder? So again, if we jump back in, the stretch goal that we're referring to would be, in this case, the maximum cost per lead that we are comfortable targeting towards. So if this was set to, say, 6, basically the question would be, how does this affect the performance of a folder? So, you know, again, the stretch target allows for keywords that were not on the first page to be bid up to the first page using the minimum target for calculations of bids versus this target cost per lead. So the way that this could affect your folder is that if you have enough keywords that are using the $6 cost per lead versus the $5 cost per lead to try to reach the first page, you could have some, you could see your overall performance of your folder not quite hitting your target. It might be somewhere between this $5 and $6 CPL instead of, and could be actually closer to the $6 CPL depending on what percent is reaching for that stretch target instead of this $5 CPL. One easy way to kind of see how much or what percentage of your keywords and which keywords are being bid on to hit that stretch target is by pulling this bid category into the grid using the view builder. And if you see here, we can filter, and we can actually filter here on bid to stretch target. So you can see exactly which keywords are being bid to the stretch target versus just being bid economically to hit your targeted CPL. Let's see, what else? So another question that we get asked pretty frequently is, should the target, should my target be adjusted to control publisher spend? So the short answer to that is not really, not unless it's a longer-term goal of yours. The target that we'd, or the what we'd want to actually adjust in order to hit our targeted spend. What we'd actually want to adjust instead would be boost. So boost is actually a great way to control publisher spend. So boost is used as a multiplier after the algorithm calculates this optimal bid. And so increasing or decreasing boost can help to, so if we were to increase it, it would help to increase the cost for very efficient keywords to try to bid those efficient keywords even further up the page if you have the money to spend. Okay, so another question that we get is, or that we did get, is, can we move groups between folders? So the option to move groups between folders definitely does exist. However, it's probably the most important thing to note here is that keyword bids are calculated based on settings set at the folder level. So if you're going to move keywords in a folder, or within folders, or I'm sorry, groups within folders, you definitely want to make sure that the new folder you're moving the group into is going to be, you know, be mindful of the settings within that new folder. It's also probably important to note that long tail keywords borrow data for bidding from the folder level. So if you're moving a high volume set of groups to a different folder, you might not only affect the performance, the way that the performance of the new folder is achieving its targets, but you might also actually affect the folder that these groups have left from, or the old folder, and that you know, especially if there were a lot of long tail keywords borrowing you know, data from those head groups that you kind of, or head keywords that you kind of moved out when moving these groups. You know, it's just kind of an important thing to note, to keep an eye on, you know, folders, and to take that into consideration as you move those groups between folders. We probably have time for about one more question. So how about we take one from the audience? So we have how to account for seasonality. So that's a great question. So seasonality, generally, especially if you've got a very seasonal product, you know, we probably want to use a year-over-year kind of look-back window, and the best way to do that would be to set exclude dates. So you can set, your exclude dates can be set, especially your static exclude dates, can be set for long periods of time. So if you only have a 3-month window every year that you'd like your folder to be using for bidding purposes, because you know, maybe only Q1 is important in terms of, or relevant in terms of setting historical bids, this is where you'd want to come in and exclude, you know, anything past, or maybe from April 1st forward for the year, so that the folder is utilizing kind of a year-over-year look back as we try to historically or predict what the most efficient bids are going to be. So that covers off, and that is about all the time we have for today. So again, if you have questions that have come up while watching or participating in this webinar that were not answered, please seek out your OMM for assistance, or again, utilize our help section, as that is the best way to kind of, they've got a lot of information in there, especially a lot of information that we've covered within this webinar that many people or many clients have found useful. So other than that, I appreciate your time today, and happy bidding.